systems, and we've been working with International, along with, I'm trying to think of the manufacturer of the body, and Bendix and Arvin Meritor, who manufactures the brakes. So we've had 2 of the 3 new recyclers have been spending some time at the dealer. So that's kind of tied them up, and we've had to kind of patch together a few of those older ones, and sometimes they even use refuge trucks to pick them up. So, but I think we're kind of getting the hiccups worked out of that. So, but we did have some warranty issues with them.
Okay, and where did the trucks have to go for warranty work?
Tri-County International here in Warren. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, who made the request? Mr. Bacamino?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Neighbors, you mentioned the pits from the 50s and that, and I understand what you're saying with that. With this column apparatus, is it more efficient as far as can you repair or maintain vehicles faster with less man hours?
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely.
And that's one of the things that I've been trying to get to the voters out there in the community, is that it's not always about what you spend, it's how much you save. I mean, you can, I used to change my oil by myself. I used to love doing that, and it was kind of a fun thing to do. Grandpa taught me how to do it, and it's just fun to do. But it's become so efficient now just to go to these oil changes with the coupon. Sometimes it's just faster, it's efficient. So the efficiency factor here with the new technology and being able to lift so much tonnage of truck, we're actually going to be saving man hours, which translates into saving dollars for your department. So it's a tough thing sometimes. I know on a family budget, I talked to someone earlier about comparing things to family budgets. Sometimes you have to spend a little bit of money to make more money. I mean, I have to keep my car, I have to get the oil changed so I can drive my car to work and keep my job. I mean, otherwise. So there are expenditures, but some expenditures are better than others. I think this would be one of them that would save us a lot of money because of the efficiency factor, but more importantly is the safety that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
Our employees need to be protected at all costs, and this is a lot safer than the pits. I remember a tragedy happened in Clinton Township a few years back of a student that was actually killed in a pit fire, and it's terrible. There's nothing you can do when you're down there. So this is leaps and bounds safer, more efficient. It will save us money in the long run. But I thank you for investigating this. I don't know why we haven't had this sooner for our employees. And again, if it saves money, I'm for it. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? Go ahead and call the question. Mr. Sadowski.
Yes.
Ms. Comartin?
Yes.
Mr. Bacamino?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Liss?
Nay.
Mr. Stevens?
Without a doubt.
Yes?
That's a yes.
Ms. Vogt?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Camp, yes. The motion passed 8-1.
11E, request to approve an additional appropriation of funds in the amount of $113,268, budget of the Michigan Transportation Local Road Fund, in order to provide sufficient funds in several accounts for the balance of the fiscal year, and consideration and adoption of a resolution approving said request.
Need a motion and support?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Stevens, support by Mr. Green. Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Liss?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Neighbors, this is for budget transfer for the expenditures for snow and ice removal.
Yes, sir.
Why is it coming why is it coming in June? I know they're still playing hockey tomorrow.
Yeah, I worked with Mr. Simone, brought it to my attention, you know, that we're getting to the end of the budget here, and we need to close things up, I guess, at the end of the budget. So with the amount of times that we went into the subdivisions and did the local roads, the way the overtime is broke up between them, so many funds, yeah, you know the story.
$113,268?
Yes, that includes, you know, the overtime, the pension, all the inclusive
Permanent
costs.
employees, overtime, Social Security, employee insurance, retiree health insurance, longevity, retirement fund, equipment rental.
Yes, sir.
$61,337 in equipment rental.
Yeah, that's billed back through Act 51 for when we use it. We bill back 51 for each piece of equipment is billed on an hourly basis is how it's set up.
What kind of equipment were you running?
Heavy-duty salt trucks.
You can rent those?
Pardon me?
You can rent those?
No, they're ours. That's how we pre-fund it, and then we bill the road funds back. And
Oh,
it's based
right.
on an hourly rate. That's where we come up with that dollar amount.
Right.
Yep.
How many hours would you say city, your department accumulated in removing, how many man-hours in removing snow and ice?
No, that would be pretty tough to figure out. I could get you that. I mean, but
No,
it's,
it's got
broke-
$18,000 and, you know, it
just for instance, this is local roads. This is when we have enough snow to go into the subdivisions, like over 4.5 inches, which this year we went into the subdivision 4 times, which is, our average is probably twice, sometimes not at all, sometimes 3 times. This was 4 times this year. So, and as you know, we did have quite a bit of snow and a lot of small accumulations, which were call-ins and stuff during the night. So that's where this kind of ran it over on the local roads, on the side streets, school routes, miscellaneous. So this was a busy winter. The exact hours I don't have, but I could get them.
No, I mean, you've got
Yeah.
$18,000 in permanent employee hours.
Yeah.
What's the average?
It was an overly busy year, more than the average, why we need to reallocate funds for local roads.
What was the average wage of the driver?
As far as
People who were pushing the snow plows and the salt trucks?
their average straight time,
Straight time pay
Um,
without benefits?
26 and some change.
Okay, yeah, that'll tell me about how many hours.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Neighbors.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from council members?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Vogt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Neighbors, don't we, when we budget for permanent employees, we budget them at 40 hours?
Yeah, but this is for all the extra overtime. Most of all these storms were at night, and, you know, when we run 24 hours a day to clear the city after a large snowfall, we make the call to go into the residential side street. So that's what ran us over on local roads, not major roads.
Okay, but your overtime is only $12.74. Your permanent employees, $18,362. If your overtime was high, I could understand that. You've got your drivers going and spending extra time.
Right, well, like I said, in a 24-hour shift, some of it is gonna fall on straight time too, but I'm saying, what we do is when we go into the subdivisions, we run as many guys as we can for however long it takes to get the whole city cleared. We shoot for 24 hours, so it incorporates straight time and overtime. Is that what you're alluding to?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is we've already budgeted these employees for 40 hours. Were there additional employees?
Yes, somewhere, we did have to bring in some other employees from other departments. Yeah, we were short, especially for the second shift, our employees, you know, we've gone from,
But weren't they paid out of their department?
no. No, when they come and plow snow for DPW, we pay them out of our overtime budget.
All right, so, but you're not hitting your overtime budget. You're only asking for $1,274 for overtime, right?
I don't have the figures in front of me. Mr. Simone broke it down exactly what we needed to make us whole in each line item there. So him and I kind of worked together on that. He gave me the hard numbers to shore it up. Because it's broken up, like I said, between all the different funds. There's 6 different funds, so local road would only have a certain amount based on an average. And then as many times as we went in the subdivision, it put us over. As far as the breakdown for the insurance and all that, that was all computed by the budget director.
I understand, but we're taking money from the fund balance. All right?
That's my understanding. This is an extra allocation to make up for the large amount of snowfall and stuff, yes.
Okay, but we already budgeted for permanent employees. So unless you've added employees, we shouldn't have to increase the permanent employees.
I believe all the permanent employees are budgeted on straight time, not for all the extra overtime that they did. So when you add that in, out of the overtime fund, I'm assuming he's got to pay for all the other social security and everything, and pension benefits and all that come out of that overtime. I think permanent employees is just based on straight 40 hours. Correct?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
And for permanent employees, you're asking for $18,362.
Yeah, that would be a good question for Mr. Simone. When it gets into the nuts and bolts of it, I don't know how he comes up with those exact dollar figures. You know, he goes through the payroll, and when it's broken down by the funds and we forward it, then at the end here, we have to reallocate, and then he tells us what needs to go in each one to make everything
Right, and
balanced. Yeah.
if the permanent employees are paid from, because they're from a different department, but they've been utilized by you, so we're saying now DPW should pay for that instead of Parks and Rec.
Yeah,
I know
correct.
some Parks
Yes.
and Rec people worked,
Yeah, they pay for them out of our local road funds. Each snowstorm, maybe I had 3 or 4 guys from different divisions working anywhere from 20 to 30 hours of overtime or whatever, then that would be paid out of DPW's funds, not out of, let's say, water or sanitation. So that may be where the permanent employees, because we didn't use that many of them, that many hours. So maybe that's where that line item is for permanent employees, not the DPW employees. They're probably from a different division.
so what would happen then is if we're paying permanent employees out of DPW's account instead of, say, Parks and Rec, then Parks and Rec would have a surplus. Okay?
No, most of them, we utilize them on overtime, not during their regular shift. That wouldn't pull them from there. So it wouldn't really have any effect on, let's say, Parks and Rec, because we used them at night when they would have been home sleeping anyway. So we paid them overtime out of DPW funds. We didn't rob any money from Parks and Rec because it was during the night. I wouldn't pull anybody that from their normal day's work to come over and plow snow. If it snowed during the night, I would use people that were home sleeping and bring them in. And then in 7 o'clock in the morning, their regular shift, they would go back to their normal job. That's all. I just used them. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes,
I didn't pull any money.
but your request doesn't follow what you're saying, because you don't have that much in overtime. If it's all because of overtime, then it should show in overtime. And it doesn't.
Yeah, that would be a good question for the budget director. I don't get into the balancing all the different budget stuff for that. Once it goes down to him, then he tells us where we're short on which fund, because he's the one that divides the overtime into all the accounts.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm saying is I don't have an exact answer for you for that question, so.
Yeah, I understand. You are
Okay.
not the budget master.
Right.
But would it create a huge problem for you if we held this off for a couple of weeks so Mr. Simone could answer those questions?
Sure, if that's what you'd like to do, sure.
All right. Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to table so we could get some answers from Mr. Simone.
Motion to table by Ms. Vogt.
Madam Chair, before I support that, I would just like to make one comment.
Is there any other support for the tabling?
Support.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Comartin, but I have a support to table. I have to call the motion to table. Mrs. Vogt,
Yes to table.
Mr. Liss,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Comartin,
Yes.
Mr. Bachamino,
Yes.
Mr. Warner,
Yes to table.
Mr. Stevens,
No other council people had questions.
Mr. Sadowski.
No.
Camp, no. The item was tabled, 6-3.
Madam Chair, question for the chair.
Mr. Liss.
When this comes back, my understanding is that since this is a budget adjustment, I guess I'm asking for ruling, or will be asking for ruling from the chair. Since this is a budget adjustment, does this not require a minimum 6-3 vote?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Agenda item 12A.
Item 12A, request to approve a one-year agreement with Leadership Consultants Incorporated for government affairs and legislative lobbying services for the city of Warren in the amount of $74,400 and consideration and adoption of a resolution approving said request.
Need a motion and support?
Motion to approve?
Support.
Motion by Mr. Sadowski, support